And hello, my name is Martin, and today what we're going to do is we're going to build upon the statue enemy that we created in the last video and add a shooting feature to this. So we are going to generate a projectile and have it, I guess, I guess not necessarily aimed at us, but I guess because the character is the character that's attached to is coming towards us, it'll look like it's being aimed at us. So let's go ahead and start. So what we're going to do is go back to your content folder, go to a_enemies or whatever folder you put your enemies in. From there we have the statue enemy that we created in the last tutorial. Let's go ahead and right click on that and hit duplicate. This one we're going to be calling shoot enemy or shooting enemy. So shooting enemy, and I think I'm going to go ahead and have to call this one shooting enemy 1 or shooting enemy 2 because I may already have one. And let me just go double check. Shooting, yeah, so I have a shooting enemy. So let's make this one shooting enemy 1. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save. All right. So, in doing that, let's go ahead and open up the shooting enemy real quick. And really, before we open up the shooting enemy, let's actually go to the first-person player and figure out how the first-person player is actually shooting at us, or shooting, because we do have the ability to shoot a projectile already in the game. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how that's actually happening. So I'm going to go to Content. I'm going to go to First-Person BP. I'm going to go to Blueprints, and right off the bat I see that there is a object. It's a blueprint class, and it's an actor, and that's the first person projectile. So if I double click on that, you'll see that it has a projectile movement, and there's a couple of things that have been done to it. There's an event on hit. It stimulates physics, and I guess that's how it makes it bounce, I suppose. Anyways, so that's the projectile. So there's something happening with it. And then if we look at the first person BP, we'll see that they actually have this thing called spawn projectile. And because this is being triggered by the person playing, there is a event which is input action fire, which is you hitting the, I believe it's the, I think it's the right arrow. Anyways, so it goes into a montage play, which is an animation that gets the character to do something. From there is a get transform, which means that it has to figure out where something is in the world to be able to transform from. Once that happens, we get a spawning of the projectile from that location, and then there's a sound that creates the effect of the explosion. Now this part is for the VR visors or the VR makers, so we're not going to concern ourselves with that. And then the other thing we'll do is we'll look at the viewport, and if we zoom into the gun at the point of the projectile, we'll see that there is actually a spherical ball that's in there. If I can click on it, I'll just click on sphere, and this is actually where the projectile is going to be spawned from. So there needs to be, this is actually what it's referencing as the location, the transform controls. So let's go ahead and create all this. So the first thing that's super obvious is we need to get our own projectile. So instead of having to do it from scratch, I'm just going to take the one that they have here and I'm going to duplicate it. So I am just so that you know, in Content, First Person BP, Blueprints, which is where the projectile is for the first person, I'm going to right click, duplicate, and this time I'm going to call it enemy projectile 1 because I already have a first one because I've done a demo for this already. So enemy projectile 1. And we don't need it in this folder, so we are going to move it into the folder that is correct for us. So this is going to be our a_enemies, or the folder that you have the shooting enemy in. It's now going to ask us, do we want to move? Copy, we want to move because we don't want it here. All right, so now we're going to go back to content A_enemies, and we see now that we have our shooting enemy 1 and our enemy projectile 1. From there, the next thing we need to do is open up our shooting enemy. And since this is going to, oops, why did I do that? Go ahead and close that box. Let's close that box. Okay, so in shooting enemy, the only thing that we have is the move information for right now. So the first thing that we probably need to do is go ahead and add that projectile spawning location. So to do this, let's go to add component. We need to create a scene component, which is actually right there, so you don't have to scroll down too far. So there it is underneath common scene, and this we're going to call spawn projectile location 1. Spawn projectile location 1. Okay, now once we've created that, we're going to want to highlight it, go into the viewport, and actually see, oh, and before we move on, let's change our mesh real quick, just so then that way we have, you know, the ones that are sitting down are the ones that move at us, and then maybe the ones that are standing up will, or, you know, if we have a different mesh. So let's go and find a different mesh. Okay, this is good. They're both, I guess, statues with wings, so that's fine. From here, the only thing I see is that if I turn on pawn sensing, this guy's actually backwards. So let's go ahead and rotate him. So we'll select, and right now it's at a 90-degree rotation. So let's go -90, should flip him 180 degrees to its new position. And for you, you know, maybe when you bring something in, it wasn't not rotated the right way, or it was rotated the right way. The way to obviously check is to see what direction the pawn sensing is going, and then face your statue in that direction, whatever the front of your statue is. So once we've got that, let's go back to spawn projectile location. So right now this thing would be shooting from its feet. So let's pull that out, and last time I did this, or with the demo that I did to just check all my work, I placed it here at the forehead. It's really way too tall, so I'm going to place it here, let's say somewhere by the shield, or maybe over here by the hand, somewhere that makes sense. Now the other thing we also want to do is we want to make sure that this projectile doesn't actually gets the chance to be created, that it doesn't dissipate or hit this and bounce in a weird direction, right? Because it's actually touching a surface when it generates. So when you do this, we want to make sure obviously that it looks right, that it's close to where it's supposed to be, but it's not actually inside the hand or inside the object. With the gun we had earlier, it was because there was a hole that was inside the gun, and this was smaller than that. But in this situation, this should be good enough. Just make sure that you do have some space for it. Okay, so now we've done what we need to the mesh to make it look different, and also to create a point where this is going to start being created from. So the next thing we need to do is go to the event graph, which is at the moment just set up for chasing us. So I'm going to take the chasing part, or the AI move to, and shift that down a little bit so we have some more space. Just open that up. All right, maybe too much space, but we'll come back to that. Off of this is the cast to first person character. Let's create a sequence. Okay, then remember that the sequence is first this, then this. So first it's going to chase us, then it's going to shoot us. So what we'll need now is a branch. And the reason why we need a branch is because we don't need this thing shooting all the time. First it needs to see us, then it'll start shooting. So the branch gives us the ability to create and spawn off the projectiles, and also, and really the reason why we're doing this is we could just go straight into the spawning of the projectile, which would be the next bubble, which we were going to create, the function bubble, or the spawn actor bubble. But we want this thing to have sort of like an on-off feel to it. So it's only going to shoot us when we're in range. It's going to look a certain way. And this is going to make sure that also that this thing sets up on a loop to allow us to continue to keep shooting. Otherwise, it would generate the projectile once and then it wouldn't do it again. So we are going to set up a branch that makes sure that it continues to keep shooting at us, and it knows to continue to keep, well, I say shooting, to continue to keep generating or spawning the projectile actor. All right, so once we have this branch condition, part of what we need to do is grab spawn location 1, bring that out on the floor. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Haha. We actually need to create a variable. So last time we created a variable, we grabbed it off of the back end of something and pulled out, and there was an option there to create a variable. If we do that with this, there is the ability to be able to promote this to a variable. Variable means that it can be changed, that there is something about it that can be varied. So when we say variable, that's what we're doing. We're adding a condition to this branch that can be an on-off. And in this case, we actually want this to be a Boolean. So we do want just a yes, no, on-off, true, false. So we're going to go ahead and promote this to a variable. Let's give it a name called spawn projectile location, which is the same, so we can keep track of it, right? So this is going to be the variable for that. So spawn location projectile 1, since it won't let us name it the same thing twice or have two things that have the same name. So spawn projectile location. Since I have the 1 up there, I'm not going to use the 1 again. Okay. So we'll see now that this is that. I can delete that, grab this one. There is a get and a set. Remember that this is a variable. So if we're getting the variable, we're getting an instance of what it is right now. If we're setting the variable, we're going to make a change to it, and we're setting the new change. So we don't need to do that right now. What we do need to do is get an instance of the variable and place it into the condition. And that will give us a true statement. Oh, actually it won't yet. Once we've actually dropped this on here, we'll see that the default variable is that it's asking us to please compile the blueprint before we get this option. So let's go ahead and hit compile, and we'll see now that we get a spawn projectile location, which is the name of the variable, and that it is now checked, meaning it is true. Since we are going to write the rest of this code off of the true condition, that's what we need this variable to be. If you do not do this, the whole code won't work, because it'll never know to, the condition will never be true to ever get it to start firing. So we want this condition or this variable to be set to true. Now, off of the branch's true condition, or the true execute, what we want to do is spawn an actor. So spawn actor. Okay, spawn actor from class. And from here, what we'll do is we'll look for the projectile. There's a long list of stuff, so we can actually just type in projectile. We should have first-person projectile. I actually have 2 of them, and they are both called projectile and projectile 1. So I'm going to go with the one without the, because I think that's the one that's actually part of this one. So anyways, you will only see the projectile for the first-person character and the one that you created. In my case, I had 2 because I've already done an example of this. So from there, we need it's going to need to know where to spawn from, and this is going to be a get world transform. Remember that transform is our X, Y, and Z coordinates. So we are going to right-click and type in get world transform. Oops. And we'll see that we get it narrowed down. If this is clicked, we get it narrowed down to just the options that are available from our components panel. And we actually want this to be spawn projectile 1, location 1. This is why I called it that, so it would be easy to recognize from a list. Okay, and we are going to attach this to spawn transform. So now it knows what it's going to spawn and where it's going to spawn it. And as soon as it sees us, because that's what we're saying, cast to see us, we're saying move to us, and then start shooting. From there, the next thing and actually that thing's way too far off, so let me just bring that guy back a little bit. There we go. All right, so first it's moved to us, then it starts shooting. I'm just making this a little prettier. There we go. Now the other thing too is you see how this is going like straight through. At any point in this line, if you hold over the line, you'll see that it glows. If you double click, it'll actually add a component which allows you to move the line. It's sort of like there we go. And now we can tell that that's actually separate, right? That it's going in this direction, that it's bypassing that area, and it's not actually going through there. So that's a neat little, it's a node that, and again, all you have to do is double click on a line and it'll get you there. Especially when the line's glowing. Okay, anyways, little aside, but good. Now, what we need to do is we need to add an impulse. Now, the impulse is going to allow us to generate a shoot amount and also point the firing of the firing of the projectile in our direction, right? So or I should say in the direction that the enemy character is facing. All right, so to do this, we are at spawn enemy projectile. We are going to click off the execute and type in impulse. And the impulse that we are looking for, you'll see that there are quite a few of them. And the impulse that we are looking for is going to be off of whatever your static mesh is. So whatever the character is, we need to figure out what its forward is, so then that way the thing shoots in that direction. So not anything else but the actual static mesh. Oops. And so remember that the static mesh in our case is the statue. So again, click off, type in impulse static mesh. All right, so that's the first part. The next part is going to be the actual impulse, which is the vector information of what is forward and which way to shoot. Before we move on, though, we are going to need to create one more variable. It's going to be a float variable, which is going to give us the ability to be able to set a number. That number is going to be our shoot amount. So that is going to give us how much ammunition the enemy character has before it resets, before it shoots again. All right, so to do this, let's go ahead and create that variable. So last time we did it by pulling off of something, right, to create this variable. This time we're actually going to do it from over here in the My Blueprints information, right? So My Blueprints variable or elements. So there's variable. We see that we have a plus variable. By default, it comes in as a Boolean. We can see there that we have an option that's called variable type. And we're going to click on the downward arrow and find a float. Now that this is a float, you'll see that also down here it says, please compile the blueprint for you to be able to get a value for this. If you don't do it, you won't get any ammunition. So we're going to go ahead and hit compile. We now have new variable is set to 0. So let's put this as 10. That way the enemy character has 10 shots before it runs out of ammunition. So we are going to go ahead and name the variable, and I'm going to call this shoot amount. And so then, we also need to go ahead and compile that, and we still have the 10. All right, so now we have the variable that we need to complete this part of the blueprint. So to do this, we need to get the forward vector. So get forward vector, and this time we want it of the we want it for the static mesh, right? So the static mesh is whatever direction that thing is pointing is going to be our forward direction. All right, so I'm just gonna tuck that in there so that they're close to each other, and put this one, actually, you know what, let's give this a little bit more space. There we go. Now, the next part of this is that we also need to add the shoot amount. So not only do we need the forward vector, but we also need to add the shooting vector itself. So the amount of, or the shooting float, I should say. So to do this, we need to multiply the vector times the amount of shots that we have. So we are going to type in vector, and you'll vector, and you can hit the asterisk, which is going to be, remember, that's the math sign for multiply. So vector times vector is what we're looking for. This would normally be coordinates, but we are getting those coordinates from wherever the static mesh is. It's left X, Y, and Z, and now we need to get the X, Y, and Z of the ammunition. So we are going to get the shoot amount, add that here. We are going to get an instance of it, and then we are going to put it in the same direction. So from there, we're going to add that to the impulse, and we are now done with this portion of it. Okay. So from there, what would happen now is that it would shoot 10 times and then it would stop. Right? And then it would never shoot again, I don't believe, unless... Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to set the spawn projectile location to off, and then on, and then off, or off and then on, so then that way it goes and it cycles back through this branch condition. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because as it is right now, as we have it written, the way what would happen is this enemy character would see us, it would move towards us, then it would start shooting towards us in the direction of where we are. It would have 10 shots and it would be done. And it would just keep shooting. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the gun off if it's not seeing us, right? So otherwise this thing would just run itself out, and it would just shoot wildly into the air for 10, until it ran out of bullets, and then it wouldn't shoot again until it saw us, right? So we don't want that to happen. We want it to, as soon as it stops seeing us, to run out of ammo, or to stop shooting. To do this, what we're going to do is get a spawn projectile location. We are going to set it because we are going to make a change. Remember that the variable means that we have a value that can be changed. Right now that value is set to on because we have it from way up there. And what we're going to do is attach the execute from this to the set, and that is going to set this to stop, or to not be true. So remember that if this is not true, then it's false and it doesn't do anything. It's only going to shoot at us if it's true. So from here, what we want to do is we want to set a delay, and I'll explain why in a second, but first we want to set the delay. Now, what this delay is going to do is this is the amount of time between shots. So instead of shooting all, like whether it's automatic semi-automatic or regular shot, right? So if you've got this number at, let's say, less than 1 second, it's going to be like right now this thing would be like going and it would be creating like a burst of these, because it would only have 0.2 seconds between shots before so it would have 10 seconds, or it would have this much time to shoot quite a bit of ammunition. Anyways, too fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to knock this down to 1 second, and then we're going to grab another one of these, Control C, Control V, and this time we are going to set this back to true. So then that way it goes back and it cycles back through the code. Okay, so that will be our duration. So at this point, we now should have everything working for this character. Let's go ahead and give it a test. So we're going to hit compile and save. And let's put one of these on the floor. Okay, and let's go towards it and see if it indeed starts shooting at us. And there it is. So it's shooting. We see that it's sort of being generated right there by the hand. And we are close enough to it to where it would be moving. And it is still shooting. So now let's move far enough away. It's no longer perceiving us, so it's not shooting. So we can get close enough to get it to shoot and move towards us. Okay, so there we go. We now have a shooting, moving enemy. Remember that all the motion came from the statue, the floating statue or the moving statue. And at this point now we have a statue that can move towards us and shoot. Let's get it to shoot again. There's the shooting, or the projecting of the spawning of the projectile. 1, 1, 1, 1. So it's every 1 second. And you can adjust the position of where it's shooting from, as long as it's not inappropriate. And there we go. So you're all done. So I hope you've enjoyed the video and you've learned a lot, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.